Welcome to the BSB Bookathon Fall Edition. Raand asked to go first, so if you can give a brief intro, and if everybody else can mute your mics while she's doing her reading.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks everybody for being here tonight again, and I hope you've been to some of the other ones, and if not, now you'll be seeing what they're like. I am reading tonight as Raand, which is my paranormal romance pseudonym. I'm reading from Enchanted Hunt, which just came out in September. It is the 8th in the Midnight Hunters series, but it is a standalone in that if you haven't read any of the other ones, you could read this one and it would make perfect sense. For those of you who enjoy reading paperback, this is about a 35,000 word novella, and it is published with its partner, Rogue Hunt, as one volume, and that came out in paperback in September. So to give you just a little bit in the way of background, very briefly, the main character in this scene is Zora Constantine, and she is the alpha of the Snowcrest Wares, and her pack has been under attack by some kind of creatures that have been appearing pretty much out of nowhere. And she has sought the help of a neighboring pack, the Timberwolves, and they are the main characters in the first probably 6 books in this series. And they have sent a soldier, whose name is Trent, along with a number of warriors to help out. And Zora and Trent have formed an affection, which is not looked upon with favor by either pack, in that outpack matings are not generally condoned. So they've been fighting this attraction. This is an action scene, and unlike many of the scenes I've read when I read from my paranormal romances, this time the characters are actually in pelt. So they are in wolf form. When you hear them speak, it's actually a mind speak. They're not speaking wolfy, but they are actually communicating mentally. So Zora is looking for Trent, and she expects that in their war games, there's going to be an attack. What she doesn't know is they are actually under attack or about to be under attack. Zora led her soldiers along the winding deer trail toward the high bluff above the creek. From that vantage point, she would be able to see the most likely positions where the Timberwolves lay in wait for her and her wolves to walk into their trap. She chuffed, as if they were so naive. They were wolves, hunters, and among the largest predators in the forest, but not so arrogant or so inexperienced that they would allow themselves to be seduced into a trap. She was halfway up the bluff when she scented Trent and the other Timberwolves. 6 wolves, close but rapidly scattering into the forest. She slowed, scented again, and Trent's power stirred her wolf. A pulse of danger followed the wash of heat that excited her as only Trent's essence could do. Something was wrong. Something threatened Trent's wolf. Mentally, Zora reached out to her soldiers. Spread out, form a line, be ready for an attack. She couldn't risk her small force being surrounded, although separating them might be just as risky. Still, if faced with an overpowering enemy, some of them would escape to warn the others. Pressing low to the ground, stalking forward through the thinning scrub, she sent a warning through the pack bonds to the rest of her Snowcrest wolves, alerting them to danger and calling her lieutenants for reinforcements. Well out ahead of her small troop, she bounded the final yards to the bluff, homing in on Trent's scent. Trent was close, her battle lust a potent tang on Zora's tongue, emboldening her wolf for the joy of the hunt. Zora covered the ground with long bounding strides, heart pounding, blood simmering, her only goal to reach Trent, to stand beside her and fight whatever danger she faced. Soaring up and over the rocky ledge, she landed on a barren shelf of rock in the midst of a nightmare. Trent battled half a dozen of the creatures Zora had seen before. Wolves, but not wolves. Dead creatures brought back to life, their skeletons twisted and deformed, their elongated muzzles dripping saliva from fangs too long to be contained within their muzzles. Eyes a fiery red, their coats mangy patches of fur interspersed with leathery skin, as if their pelts had been burned away. At the center of the ring of reanimated wolves, Trent charged and snapped, spinning with power and grace to drive back first one, then another of the creatures that lunged at her, attempting to clamp their jaws on her limbs or her neck. Blood darkened Trent's pelt in a dozen places from bites and tears, but she fought with relentless fury. Zora's wolf growled and bolted over the nearest creature, landing at Trent's side. Go back, Trent demanded in silent communication. On your left, Zora signaled a mental warning, ignoring the foolish wolf as if she would leave her to fight alone. Trent spun away, and Zora dove beneath the snapping jaws of the nearest creature. Catching its neck in her jaws, she clamped down hard and twisted her shoulders with a sharp snap, tearing out its throat and severing its spine. The head lolled and the creature collapsed, oily smoke seeping out of its disintegrating body. Nothing with any spark of life would do that. A second creature joined the first in reeking disintegration as Trent tore into its skull. Now they were 2 against 4. Zora howled, wild with unbridled power. The creatures were twice the size of even an alpha were, but their battle prowess was fragmented and fractured. As they fought as a pack, Trent and Zora might have been overcome, but these creatures had no pack sense, perhaps had no free will. Trent took down another, and Zora dispatched a fourth. 1-on-1 now, and in the distance, Zora felt her pack nearing. She circled the last creature, dashing in to pull it away from Trent. Above her, lightning flashed and the sky tore open. A beast the size and distorted shape of a bull moose dropped to the ground a few feet in front of her. What would have been a rack of antlers appeared like rows of gleaming 2-foot-long silver-tipped spikes. A wound from one of those might kill even an alpha were. The maw pulled back to expose double rows of canines, longer than her forelimbs, and talons tipped the cloven feet at the end of the limbs. The limbs resembled human legs, twisted and deformed. The massive chest heaved, and the beast bellowed a sound like demented thunder, lowered its head and charged. Zora twisted, and a silver spike glanced across her shoulder, opening her flesh. The silver burned, her muscles froze, and she stumbled. Ignoring the pain, she caught her balance and swirled to face the beast again as it rammed forward, head down, lethal spikes aimed at her chest. Trent streaked in from Zora's side, slammed into the beast, and latched onto its throat. Blood, black as pitch, poured from the wound. With a roaring bellow, the beast vaulted skyward and in an instant was swallowed by the darkness that closed as if a giant eye had winked shut. 3 timber wolves raced into the clearing, and a dozen snow-crest soldiers cleared the bluff. Within an instant, the 2 remaining creatures were torn asunder. Zora searched frantically for Trent's scent, for the connection that had settled in her chest the moment she'd seen her, and that she could no longer find. With a howl, she threw back her head and raged. Thank you.
There we go. Amazing. Thank you. All right. So now we are going to go to Erin. Zach, if you would like to briefly introduce yourself and what you're reading.
Hi, I'm Erin. I am a contemporary romance writer and lover of all things Star Wars. I am reading from The Other Women today, and The Other Women is my latest contemporary romance. It came out this month, and it is about 2 women that fall in love and then find out that they're actually connected by the same woman. So both of their hearts were broken by this person. So I am going to start basically right when they meet, and it is all done in alternating first points of view. So this is actually from Francesca's point of view, and the other character is Cecily. So this is when they very first meet. I cannot even believe how slow this night is going. Max slides up next to me after we clear all the recent drink tickets. He smells like cologne and vodka. The first moment of downtime we've had all night, standing still for a minute feels nice. I lean into his bulky shoulder and sigh. I was no shit thinking the same thing. Like, maybe the slowest night I've ever experienced? For real though, he turns toward me and clears his throat. Are you gonna go meet that straight woman tonight? I laugh. Why? Just making small talk. Are you going to go meet my brother Armando? Yup. His tone is so matter-of-fact, which calms my worried mind. The last thing I want is for Armando to get mixed up with someone who isn't ready to accept all the parts of him, including the bad parts. On the other hand, the last thing I want is for Maxwell to get burned by my gambling addict brother. You know, he has issues, right? I know. Like with gambling? I know. And you're okay with this? Well, of course I'm not okay with it, but he's been very honest with me. His chest puffs with his intake of air and deep puffs with an exhale. I guess I really need to figure out what I'm doing, though. We both laugh at how quickly matters of the heart get out of hand when not kept a close eye on. Probably a good idea, you lunatic. Whatever, at least he's available. The last boy I was serious with was married to a woman. And, well, his tone is filled with sadness, but he's staring at the end of the bar. I think he starts again and motions toward where his eyes are glued. Your night might turn around here. I look. Well, hello there, I say under my breath when my eyes land on the blonde woman perched on a bar stool. Max chuckles, so I glance at him over my shoulder. Now the night will fly. Of course, go forth and conquer, mi amor. He chuckles as he pushes me gently toward the woman. As I approach, she makes eye contact, and for half a second, I forget all about Willow. I forget about her dark eyes because the image is replaced with blue ones. I forget about her dark hair because all I can see is waves of blonde. I forget about her thin lips because all I can imagine are full ones pressed against my... Hello there. I was just wondering, I say as I slide up to her spot. Do you think I could have your autograph? The woman pulls her head back, looks over each shoulder, then back to me. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're famous, right? Like an actress, or let me guess, a model. I place a napkin in front of her as I glance over my shoulder at Max, who is definitely enjoying the show. He tosses me a pen and I catch it expertly as if we've been rehearsing this setup for years, which we have, but she doesn't need to know all the details of how I work. I spin the pen in my fingers so the click end is facing her. Her eyes flit to the pen, then back to mine. The color is mesmerizing. As I stare, the blue seems to darken. No, I am not an actress or a model. Well, I'm sure you'll be starring in my fantasies later on. My hair falls over my shoulder as I lean forward, place my hands on the bar top, and watch some of my finest work, which, yes, was insanely corny, wash over her. I've learned that the best way to get a woman to open up is to make her smile and laugh. The start of a smile begins to form on her full, dark red lips before she licks them. What can I make for you? Well, aside from how you made my entire night with a pickup line like that, she leans forward, chuckles, and props an elbow on the bar. Does that line really work? Most of the time, yes. Occasionally, it falls flat. Interesting. She is studying me. I can tell by the way her eyes keep moving over my features. She's causing chills to erupt on my arms. I don't think it fell flat that time, by the way. I move my hair back over my shoulder. I leave it down when I bartend. I haven't been yelled at yet to put it up, and my hair is one of my best features. I can tell all the work I put into it is paying off as her eyes follow my every movement, so I smile. You see something you like? Her attention is now on the menu. She takes her time, and if it were any other person, I'd be irritated as fuck. But watching her study the different cocktails we have on special is very hot. I'm sorry, she says, still looking. You're fine. Her eyes flit from the pages to me, then back to the pages. Take your time. I continue to stare. I'm taken by this woman, by her stature, her carriage, her demeanor. I'm sure she didn't plan on getting my attention, but she has it, fully. Her eyes snap back to mine as she folds the menu and places it on the bar. She clears her throat. May I please have an extra dirty martini with 3 olives? She sits a little straighter, starts to fidget with her napkin. Please. You already said please. Well, she starts, then clears her throat. It seems as if I've thrown her a little, but I'm not sure if it's because I want to believe I have or if I actually have. I'm polite, she says. Her tone is more playful now, which is good. I plan on playing right along. Oh, I'm sure you are. As soon as I said those words, her cheeks flush, and she visibly swallows a gulp of air. I've frazzled her by engaging, and I'm thrilled with myself. Do you need a second drink for your husband or a boyfriend? I motion to the empty bar stool next to her. She glances to her left while fidgeting with a wedding ring, a thin gold band that screams, we were young when we got engaged. No, just me. She moves her left hand from the bar to her lap. She smiles again, and there's something about the way she lowers her chin right before she raises her eyebrows. Please. I cannot help smiling. You got it. I spin around and get to work making her drink, hoping I haven't come on too strong, and knowing deep down, whatever happens, this woman is only a distraction. A very attractive, very sexy distraction, but a distraction nonetheless.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you.
you.
So now we're going to hear from Fiona Riley.
Hi, I'm Fiona Riley. If you don't know me, I am the writer of contemporary lesbian romance, and tonight I'm going to be reading from my new book, Bet Against Me. It just came out in September, and it's a rivals to lovers story, also a workplace romance. So this book takes place in Boston, and it features two rival luxury real estate offices. One of them was recently named Realtor of the Year. And at the ceremony, the two women who you'll meet, Kendall and Trina, got into quite a heated argument. There was some name calling and lunging. But what ends up happening that night is that the bosses of their two opposing offices make a bet. And the bet is that one woman can outsell the other in a high stakes sale of one of the new luxury buildings just came down. So whoever can sell the most apartments in this building wins the true title of Realtor of the Year, as there seems to be some inferred nepotism for one of the realtors. So Kendall Yates is one of the characters, and she comes from a large lineage of realtors from Cambridge, and Connecticut, and it's suspected that she got to where she was as Realtor of the Year because of nepotism. So Trina is the local realtor, and she is cocky, and she's worked hard to get where she gets, and she doesn't respect Kendall's success because she thinks it was given to her. So this scene I'm going to read right now is from a country club. Trina is there working and trying to generate business, and Kendall is walking in for the first time, and she sees Trina. So this is their first exchange in the locker room. Kendall leaned against the wall behind her, watching for a moment before she spoke. I didn't know you were a member here. Trina jumped. She spun on the spot, her hand at her chest. The startled look on her face faded, and the familiar taunting smile appeared as she replied, I didn't know you were a stalker. I'm not, Kendall pretended to examine her manicure. I'm here on business. So am I. Trina crossed her arms over her chest, and Kendall noticed the swell of her breasts under the tight fabric of her shirt. Then you're not a member? Because it sure seemed that way. Kendall nodded in the direction of that Birdie disappeared. It seems like you have a regular golf partner. Trina uncrossed her arms and took a seemingly casual step towards her. Not a member, just using a guest pass. The weather was too good to pass up swinging the clubs today. Kendall gave her a once-over again. A golfer, huh? That seems like too slow an activity for you. I never pegged you as a golfer. I play for leisure and business, not for exercise. And you've never pegged me. But I'm glad to know you think about it, Trina replied, and Kendall felt herself blush. That's not what I meant. Kendall sputtered. Trina looked like she was enjoying herself. Kendall tried to step back as Trina stepped into her space, but the wall behind her made her stop short. The smirk on Trina's face indicated that she noticed. And since we're on the topic, I'm not sure why you're under the false impression that I would be the one being pegged and not doing the pegging. Trina's face was inches from hers, and Kendall squirmed on the spot. Not just from the closeness. Well, maybe the closeness was a factor because Trina looked delectable in that golfing outfit. But what Trina was saying made Kendall, well, hot. You just keep underestimating me, and maybe you shouldn't. At this close range, Kendall could smell the faint scent of sunblock on Trina's face and something sweet, like perfume, or just the hint of sweat. It was pleasant. It reminded her of summer. She licked her lips, and Trina smiled. As much fun as this is, Trina stepped back, and Kendall started to exhale. I have to shower before I meet my client, so if you'll excuse me, I'll be getting naked at the locker and rinsing off around the corner. Kendall's attempt at a controlled exhale failed, and she coughed. Trina's statement almost sounded like an invitation. Good luck with that. Kendall was amazed she'd managed to choke out a reply. Trina didn't hesitate in her response. I don't need luck. I'm pretty adept at getting wet and lathering myself, but thank you for the well wishes. Kendall had to laugh. She'd practically fallen into that one. With your meeting. Good luck with your meeting, I should have clarified. Thanks, Trina said as she pulled her shirt up and off, exposing the matching light pink sports bra. Kendall did her best not to stare at the lithe, beautiful body that had been silhouetted by the now missing shirt, but it was a fruitless battle. Trina was as attractive nearly naked as she was fully dressed. Kendall averted her eyes when Trina continued to strip in front of her, something she had a feeling was slower and more intentional than it would have been had she not been there. Kendall's suit jacket pocket vibrated and she jumped at the sensation. She placed her hand against the outside of her pocket to still the phone, but the jolting motion must have drawn Trina's attention. "No phones in here, Kendall. Club policy," Trina said, and Kendall hazarded a glance in her direction. Trina was wrapped in a soft, luxurious-looking towel with the country club's logo on it. She closed her locker and stepped back into Kendall's space. Kendall was frozen on the spot, though the desire to reach out and trace her fingers along Trina's naked shoulder was almost unignorable. "Who's calling this time, I wonder?" Trina asked as she looked up at her with a mischievous expression. Kendall felt herself shudder as Trina reached into her pocket and withdrew her phone. Kendall glanced down at the phone screen, but allowed herself the opportunity to appreciate Trina's cleavage. Being taller than Trina certainly had its benefits. "Margot," Trina said with a smile. She held the phone out for Kendall to take. "Oh, you're not just going to answer it?" Kendall asked, half joking. I mean, she was really joking, but she was distracted. She could feel the heat emanating off Trina's body against her own, and though she probably should have left a long time ago, she didn't feel the need to move out of this spot or this proximity. Trina raised an eyebrow in her direction before sliding her thumb against the glass face of Kendall's phone, answering the call. She brought the phone to her ear, but kept those gorgeous brown eyes locked on Kendall's. Kendall let herself get lost in them while Trina talked. "Hey, Margot, it's Trina." Trina spoke softly into the phone, and Kendall could have sworn she'd stepped closer to her. Kendall was only barely aware of what Trina was saying because she was captivated by the bright pink lip gloss on her lips and the way those lips moved as she formed words. What the words were, Kendall found she didn't really care. I'll tell her. Thanks, Margot. Have a good day." Trina disconnected the call and slipped the phone back into Kendall's pocket. She pressed her palm against the fabric, and Kendall reflexively grabbed her wrist. "What did she have to say?" Kendall asked as she stroked her thumb along the inside of Trina's wrist. Trina didn't pull back from her touch. Instead, to Kendall's libido's delight, she reached out with her other hand and pulled at the bottom hem of her suit jacket, lightly grazing the front of her thigh in the process. Kendall's clit throbbed with warmth. "She said to have you call her later when you aren't busy," Trina said, not breaking eye contact. "Am I busy?" Kendall pulled Trina by the wrist, bringing their chests together. "Do you want to be?" Trina asked as she licked her lips, and Kendall needed to taste them. "Yes," she answered honestly. She wanted to be busy with Trina's lips on her mouth and her fingers on her body, exploring and pleasuring her. She wanted to taste the smell of summer on her skin and feel that tongue against hers. Trina moaned in response and pressed her hand against Kendall's thigh. Kendall tightened her grip on Trina's wrist, pulling her arm around her waist and lowering her head until their lips were only millimeters apart. As she leaned in to close the distance, the sound of a group of gabbing ladies entering the locker room caused her to pull back. In a flash, Trina's hands were off her body, and the space between them felt cavernous. You gotta read the book for the rest.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so I am going to go next. I'm CJ Birch. I'm reading from Just One Taste. It's my new romance. It's about Haley comes from a small town. She's sick of small town life, and she comes to the city, and she's got a job, an apartment, and almost immediately everything falls apart, and she finds herself jobless, without an apartment, and she picks up work in a small diner, doesn't really know how to cook, so she's gonna have to figure it out, and she loses her apartment and ends up living in the diner, and her boss finds her and offers her room, a spare room. And so this, the scene I'm reading is kind of taking place right after she's sort of moved into this spare bedroom of her boss's, and she's out with her friend Kalini, who she used to live with, and she's made the colossal mistake of saying that she has a crush on her boss. So Kalini's kind of giving it to her. So here we go. "So you're saying you have the hots for your boss, who is now also your roommate?" Kalini tisked and continues through the aisle. Every few minutes, she'd pick up an item and scan it, then replace it on the shelf. "That's not what I said at all. I was reading the subtext of your story. All I said was that she's a bit Felix to my Oscar. And by that admission, you're saying you care what she thinks. I've lived with you, remember? You never cared how messy you were before." Does she strut around in the buff? "Of course not." Haley grabbed a vegetable spiralizer out of Kalini's hand before she could add it to her wedding registry. "You don't need that." "How do you know?" You hate vegetables. Maybe I wouldn't hate them so much if they came in spiral form. They'd been in the depths of the bay for over an hour adding things to Kalini's registry. Her mother had insisted, and since her parents were helping out with the cost of the wedding, she found it hard to refuse. This is pointless. You don't even like half the stuff you've picked. You'll just end up returning it anyway. Exactly. Then we'll get cash, which is what we want anyway. Haley picked up a bronze statue of a cat licking itself and to examine the price. I don't think that's how it works. Doesn't matter. Kalini linked her arm with Haley's and dragged her into the next aisle. More important, what are we going to do about your hot lady boss? She slapped Haley with the scanner. I know. Why don't you bring it with you to Joe's show? It's like a date, but not a date. Haley stopped mid-aisle and stared at Kalini. I'm not trying to date my boss. That's not what we're brainstorming here. Fine, but you're still coming, right? It's on the 11th. Of course I'm coming. I've already told Lauren I can't work that day. Lauren, that's her name? Kalini pretended to swoon. Get off it. What are you, 12? It's one of the many things Joe loves about me. Okay, Kalini waved her hands in front of her. I'm done with this whole being a good daughter thing. Let's go get something to eat. I'm starving. 20 minutes later, and they were hopping off the streetcar in front of Greta's. Why'd you bring me home? I thought we were grabbing something to eat. And does this fine establishment not offer food? As Kalini crossed the street, she dodged a guy riding his bike with a pug strapped to the front basket. When they entered, the place was almost dead. It was 1:30, so the lunch rush had just ended. Kalini snagged the back booth and slid in, grabbing a menu with the holder as she did. I need to see what we're working with. She peered around her menu, eyeing the servers. Which one is she? No, you're not bringing Crazy Town to my place of work. Oh, good. They're wearing name tags. I don't need you for this. Haley covered her face with her hands. It was too much to hope that Lauren wasn't working the shift, but Haley knew Lauren's schedule by heart, much to her embarrassment. Hi, Haley. Who's your friend? Haley looked up through her hands. Lauren was carrying a carafe of coffee, a huge grin on her face. Kalini held her hand out. It's so nice to meet you, Lauren. I'm Kalini. Haley and I used to be roommates. I hear you now have that honor. Lauren shook her hand, smile faltering. You're the one who kicked her out? What? Kalini shifted gears, turning to stare at Haley. Is that what she told you? Is that what you told her? No, that's not what I said. That's not what happened. Lauren hitched her free hand on her hip. She's rooming with me because she didn't have a place to live. Lauren lowered her voice. I found her sleeping in the diner. What? Kalini's face fell. Haley, you told me you'd found a good place. I would hardly call the Palace Arms a good place. Lauren turned, probably to make sure no one was listening. Kalini whooped Haley on the head with her menu. I told you to check out the youth hostel on Spadina. What the fuck were you doing at the Palace Arms? It was the only place I could afford. Jason didn't want me staying on the couch. Haley shrugged. So I got a place. Fuck Jason, we would have made it work. The Palace Arms is an absolute shithole. Only addicts use that place. God. Kalini slumped back, folding her arms. Lauren took a step back. I'm going to give you two a few more minutes. Let me know when you're ready to order. Kalini stared up at the ceiling, silent, shaking her head every few seconds. Haley reached across the table. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. Things just spiraled really, really fast. Kalini shrugged and shook her head again. I'm upset you didn't think you could come to us. You thought we would be okay with you being homeless? I hadn't known you guys that long, and Jason was really bitchy about everything. I didn't want to impose. Hale, you're family now. If we'd known, Joe and I would have figured something out. Haley didn't know what to say. She hadn't even considered asking them for help, thinking since they had their own lives and problems. Her whole life she'd grown up with the belief that cities were cold and unfeeling, but so far she'd only been welcomed and folded into the fabric of life here. Before Haley could say anything, Kalini waved her off. I hate all this sappy bullshit. She picked up her menu. What's good here? Everything. Kalini lowered her menu. Well, the good news is she's definitely into you. She thinks I'm weird looking. Kalini just smiled. Even if she doesn't know it, she likes you. And that is me. So next we're going to go to Joy, and you can introduce yourself and what you're reading.
I am reading, this is my third book with Bold Strokes. It is a Friends to Lovers. It's coming out in November. There's a whole lot of roadblocks in their way, of course, including other relationships and a life-threatening illness. So this is actually the first chapter of the book, and this is the first time I'm ever doing this. So I hope I do it okay. I sank down on the couch. All of the air left my lungs and I struggled for breath. This couldn't be real. It wasn't real. It wasn't. Are you all right, Jody asked. I nodded, then shook my head, confused. No, I wasn't all right. My world had just come crashing down on me. I brought my eyes up to hers. Concern radiated out to me. To me. That made no sense. None of this made sense. She sat by my side and I reached out to stroke her hair. Despite the news she had just shared with me, a tingle ran down my arm at the contact. I rested my forehead against hers. Tears leaked out of my closed eyes. Oh my God, I whispered. It was all I could manage to say. I felt her arms go around me and pull me in tighter. For a brief moment, the horrible truth left my mind and I was filled with the closeness of her. She felt so alive in my arms. How could she be dying? I thought back to the first day I ever saw her, more than 6 years ago. She walked into my hair salon and plunked herself down in my chair. Her green eyes bright, her face lit up with a smile. She chatted away as I snipped new layers into her long brown hair. I found out later that she had just turned 40. Beth, she said, reading my name tag. Short for anything? Elizabeth? Bethany? Nope, just Beth, plain and simple, that's me. Her smile expanded. I doubt that. Doesn't seem like there would be anything plain and simple about you. I couldn't help but return her smile. She just had that effect on me, and I assume she had that effect on everyone. How long have you worked here, she asked. Since I bought the place 1.5 years ago. I had scrimped and saved every penny to make my desire to own my own salon a reality. Working for other people, especially the chain salons, had been a nightmare. This, on the other hand, was my dream. I'm impressed. I probably shouldn't admit this, but I usually cut my own hair. My daughter yells at me every time. She says I've had the same hairstyle since 1995. She wasn't even alive in 1995, so I'm not sure how she would know that. My name's Jody, by the way. I mentally scolded myself for not asking. Nice to meet you, Jody. Your hair is pretty even. Looks like you've been doing a decent job. Not that I'm suggesting you continue that practice. I tilted my head as I looked at her in the mirror. Can I get that in writing to show my daughter? I laughed at her joke. Sure. How many kids do you have? I like chatting with the clients. I truly enjoyed good conversation, and if they liked you, they were more likely to return, which was just plain good for business. My partner and I have 2. Well, I have 2, and she helps me raise them. My daughter's 9 and my son's 13. How about you? Any kids? Partner. She didn't look gay. Not that I was 100% sure what gay looked like. I didn't really know any gay women personally. If some of them look like Jody, well, they may have slipped by my awareness. Does that mean you don't have any kids or that you don't want to talk about it? I realized I had been lost in my own thoughts and hadn't answered the question. 1. She's 17. I ran my fingers through her damp hair, pulling it out a bit at the ends to see if I had missed anything. Wow, you must have had her when you were 5, because you certainly don't look old enough to have a kid that age. I was young when I had her. I was the same age she was now. Her father, otherwise known as a sperm donor to my family, left me as soon as I told him I was pregnant. I hadn't seen or heard from him since. I tried to get in touch with him once shortly after Maddie was born to tell him he had a daughter. I couldn't locate him, and I never tried again. Maddie asked me lots of questions about him when she was young, but didn't seem to care anymore. She currently had more interest in running with the fast crowd and skipping school than discussing her parentage, and that included me. The less she knew about me or heard from me, the better, in her opinion. I didn't let her get away with much, and she didn't like it. I brought my attention back to Jody. Thank you, was all I said. Sure, she wasn't interested in my life story. The phone next to the cash register rang. Cindy, one of my 3 hairstylists, came out of the back room. I've got it, she said. Hello, sheer perfection. I'd be happy to assist you. She followed the exact script my girls had to memorize. Sure, hold on, please. She pressed the hold button and turned to me. Beth, it's Robinson's sign shop. They want to know about stopping by to give you an estimate. I didn't like stopping when I was with a client. Tell him I'll call him back after 4. I took a couple more snips on Jody's hair and gave it a quick once-over with a blow dryer. You need a sign painted, Jody asked. Yes, the one out there isn't up to code, and I didn't know it until last week when an inspector stopped by. I just happened to be a sign painter. You are not, I said, certain she was teasing me. There, what do you think? I fluffed off her hair a bit with my fingers. It looks great, thank you. She brought her attention back to me. I really am a sign painter. She pulled a thin wallet out of her back pocket and fished out a business card. Jody Michaels, sign painter extraordinaire. Extraordinaire? It means I'm superb, exceptional, really, really good, Jody laughed. I smiled. I know what it means, I've just never seen it on a business card before. Well, how are people going to know how good you are if you don't tell them? My grandmother always told me it's okay to blow your own horn. Better to blow than to suck, she always said. She did, huh? Well, I might be paraphrasing, but it was something like that. I can give you an estimate for a new sign if you want. She put her hands up in front of her. No pressure. I could use a sign painter extraordinaire, but I'm afraid you might be out of my budget. I don't have a lot to spend. I'm really good. I'm not really expensive, and we could probably trade part of it for haircuts for me and the kids if you want. I unhooked the plastic cape around Jody's neck and shook it off behind the chair. It wouldn't hurt to get one more estimate. All right, could we set up a time to meet and I could tell you exactly what I need? Absolutely, she said. I'll bring pictures of my work and references. She stood and wiped a few stray pieces of hair off her jawline. I wasn't sure how I'd missed them. You have my number, she said. I do? Yep, right there on that little card I handed you. I felt the blush of embarrassment creeping up my face as I looked at the card in my hand. Of course. I waved the card in the air. I have your number. I'll give you a call tonight if that's all right. That works. I'll be home. It's okay if I call you at home? Your partner won't mind? I wondered how it was with two women together. I don't mean the sexual part. I could figure that out. I just mean the day-to-day stuff. Did one mind if another woman called? They must not. Otherwise, they wouldn't be allowed to be friends with other women. They would only be allowed to be friends with men. Who would want to be friends with men? Men are good for a lot of things like sex and fixing things, but for friends, I much preferred the friendship of women. Jody gave a little chuckle. She doesn't care. That's my cell number. We walked over to the cash register and Jody handed me her credit card. I ran it through and handed it back to the woman who would change my life in ways I couldn't even fathom in that moment.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so we ended up going way faster than I thought we were going to go. Does anyone have any questions? If so, you can put them in the Q&A section of the chat. If not, I have a question. What was your favorite part of writing these particular books? Like, do you have a favorite scene? Do you have a favorite process that you do? We'll start with LL Raand.
I think my favorite part of writing the series was being able to write something different than I usually write. So it was an adventure for me, and I felt like I didn't have a lot of rules. So that was really fun. I love reading, and I love reading paranormal and urban fantasies. I like just about everything that's speculative fiction, really, but I've never written any before. And I really hadn't thought about doing it until I think I'd written 24 romances when I decided I was going to do this one. And I kind of just thought I'd, give myself a little treat. But I used a pseudonym because I wanted my readers to know that it was going to be different than what I usually gave them. And there was a lot of freedom in writing something different than I'd ever written before. And it was a little risky too. And they didn't sell very well for quite a long time. So, but I'm glad I did it.
Awesome. Erin, same question.
What was the question again?
The question is, do you have like a particular favorite scene or part or process about this particular book that you wrote right now?
So my favorite scene, I think, is when they go to a strip club together. And I've actually never been to a strip club. I just watched Hustler. So I literally was like in love with that. I'm still in love with that movie, but I just kind of modeled it after that. And that is my favorite scene in that book. But the whole process of writing the book came down to really getting into like how do you feel when your heart is broken, and how do you feel when you get that first there's light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing. So that process was really depressing. I was not in a good mood ever when I was writing this book, except when I wrote the strip club scene. And that scene, I didn't want to read it because I just get so giddy reading it. It's like, it's not supposed to be funny. It's supposed to be hot. And I'm like, ah! But yeah, that's probably it.
Awesome. Fiona, same question.
So this book is a little bit of a departure for me. It's a enemies to lovers romance. And I think my favorite part about writing this book is that these are both very successful, competent women. And they're both top of the field. And the fact that they're in a battle and a war with each other is just hilarious because they hate each other. They're not even remotely nice. Like they're just snarky and nasty. And, there's like all kinds of jabs and barbs. And it's one of the most, it was really fun to write because they're both so successful that they don't have to make amends or they don't have to bow to anybody, and they don't. And then all their exchanges are just so fun and sassy. So for me, it was really fun to write something a little different. It wasn't about a meet cute. It wasn't about like a one-night stand. It wasn't about a bar. It was about two women that hate each other before they even know each other, and then them navigating their attraction to each other during that process of getting to know each other in a professional bet that really is going to determine massive success for them and income, and also a title that's up for demand. So I think that was fun for me to write because it was a little different than what I usually do.
Cool. Joy, same question.
I think my favorite thing about the book is Beth's journey. She starts out straight in the book and has to come to grips with what it means for her to love another woman. And she does it quite successfully. Another thing I like about writing is writing dialogue. I love writing dialogue, but it's probably because I have constant conversations going on in my head, and it's good to get them out.
That's interesting because I was going to say my favorite thing about writing is always the sparring between characters. Like if you can get two really good dynamics with your characters and get them going back and forth, I always have a lot of fun with that. We have a question on the Q&A for Raand. How far do you plan to go in the Hunt series? And they also say, by the way, I love your work.
Thank you. I did a really quick answer in the chat, but so I won't take everybody's time, but I do plan on doing more. I'm really just getting into writing fairy, which is probably the most romantic, fantastical part of the alternate reality that I'm writing in that series. The rest of it really takes place in the Adirondack Mountains, which if you've ever been to New York, you've been there. So it has a very realistic background for most of the stories, but now I'm writing a different universe and I'm really enjoying that. So I hope to do at least a couple more.
Cool. And we have another question. What do you know now as a successful writer you wish you knew then? For this, we'll start with Fiona.
I think every book writing experience is different and unique in that you learn every time you sit down to put something on the page. I think when I wrote my first book, it was the Mismatch, which is the beginning of a Perfect Match series. When I started writing, I didn't think I was going to write a series. It wasn't the plan. Once the characters were on the page, and the editor and I were talking, and she mentioned that maybe this would be something I'd want to expand upon. And I think realizing that after the fact, now I approach all my books in a way of seeing, can we revisit these characters? Is this a character that you'd want to see again in the future? And I think I plan my characterization a little more precisely now to make sure that this person is either likable or a wonderful villain or something so that I can revisit them in the future. I think that helps me add depth to my characterization. So that's something I definitely learned from the first book to now, where I spend more time with my sub characters and the side characters to decide, how much of an impact they make on the story. And I feel like if I spend more time giving them depth, then I think the story itself has more depth. So that's something I kind of picked up.
Cool. Erin, do you want to answer that?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I'm very happy I know now is how wonderful it is to have like a really great relationship with your editor. Like I never used to take criticism well when I was growing up. You did your volleyball approach wrong, and I'd be like, whatever, no, I didn't, but I did. And when you have someone actually trying to help you do it right, it's really wonderful. And working with Barbara Ann Wright, she's my editor, and she just has a way, she understands me and understands where I'm coming from, and but I also get what she's saying when she is correcting me, and it's not because I'm wrong. She just wants to try to make it the best book it can be. And I really appreciate that. And I did not think I was going to be like that when I first got into writing. So I'm really happy that I know that now.
Great. Joy.
Well, the thing that I screwed up a lot when I first started writing was point of view. So I wish I had understood it better then, but I think I got the hang of it now. Again, just like Erin, thanks to a good editor.
Great. And Raand, you want to answer that?
Two things, I think. Obviously, I wish I had been a better technical writer at the very beginning. I think learning craft and appreciating story and how a story works and how you put it together is really important. It makes you a more mature author. And so I hope every day I learn that. And I think I've learned to appreciate the audience, because when I started writing, I never wrote for an audience. I never even thought that anyone else would ever read what I wrote. So now I think about the audience and what it helps me make choices about what I'm writing. And it adds to the pleasure of the process.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like, so my first book that I wrote took like 6 years, and I actually didn't get it published until I'd already published 2 other books. And when I look at the difference, I think what I would have liked to have been able to tell myself is that you don't need to be fancy. Story is more important than trying to wow people with your prose. And so I wish I'd known that earlier on, and hopefully I am getting to that point. So we have another question. This one is for Erin, actually. I know you listen to music while you write. How do you choose the songs that you use?
So what I typically do is I start building a playlist based on kind of what my characters would like to listen to, what I think my characters would like to listen to. And then I always try to weave songs into the story as I'm writing it. You know, I talk about, like, in the bar that they're in, that there's an 80s cover band singing Take Me Home Tonight, you know, things like that, because music plays a big part of my life. So I want it to play a part in my characters' lives. So I like to pick songs that are going to resonate with the story, but I also like to pick songs just that I like. Like, you know, I definitely have an eclectic music taste. I had a friend show me this meme once where it was like, you know, all my different music tastes. It was like hard rock, like, you know, like rap, and then like really gangster rap, and then, you know, like beautiful poetic, you know, all like indie music. So I try to kind of make sure that it's always an eclectic mix, and it's always very fitting to the story. But I really do just pick songs that are going to resonate with my characters and in the moment in the story.
Awesome. It's funny because I noticed on your Instagram you put up playlists, and my book is the first book that I really pushed a lot of music into it. So for me, that was an important part of my process. Does anyone else use music when you're writing? Let's throw this back at everybody else. Let's start with Fiona.
So I actually write in silence as much as possible with a 3 and a 1-year-old. I don't. I listen to music in the car, and I storyboard when I drive. I spend a lot of time in my vehicle during my work day, but I actually write in complete silence.
Joy, do you use music to write? Or do you, like, when you're writing, do you use music to write, or do you try to incorporate that into your novel in any way?
I love music, and when I write, I can't listen to it. It distracts me. I don't know why, but I can actually have the TV on while I'm writing. I know it's a really weird process, but I don't know why the music bothers me, but I can't write with music.
Interesting.
And I don't usually incorporate it into the stories either, but I will keep that in mind for the future.
Raand, what about you?
Well, I don't during the first draft because I dictate it. But if I'm editing, if I'm writing and reworking something, I can do it anywhere, in the, you know, airport or anywhere, but I don't listen to music while I work.
Interesting. So that's all the questions that we have from the Q&A. So I'm going to, I guess, wrap it up unless anyone else wants to ask a question.
It's great. Great job, everybody.